I started making decisions based on this arbitrary goal that I'd set for myself, and here's what I mean. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What is going on, everyone? Today I want to talk about goals and how my process of how I set goals has changed a little bit, and I want to talk about how I set goals now and how it's just become a better process for me. So, and first I want to tell the story of my first year in real estate and how I set some goals that first year and the pros and cons of how I set them in relation to the outcomes as well. So when I first got started, I set a very arbitrary goal of my first year full-time. I wanted to flip 10 houses. And the reason I set this goal is because I saw other people out there in the space and, they would tell stories about how in their first year they flipped 10 houses, and it just seemed like a good, challenging number. I'm competitive, and I figure if someone else can do it, why can't I? And so I'm going to pick an arbitrary number that's 10, and I'm going to go accomplish it. And I kept this goal in mind throughout the year, and as I bought my first and my second and my third house, I started making decisions based on this arbitrary goal that I'd set for myself. And here's what I mean. Let's say the fifth and the sixth or the seventh house came up, and, I may have thought at the time that things were going fine operationally, but I think had I not set an arbitrary goal of buying 10 houses, I could have looked at my operation a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb and may have realized, okay, hey, I have 3 flips going on. I have 4 flips going on. I have 5 flips going on at the same time. There is a lot happening here. Would it be in my best interest to see how these things play out, see what I can learn from each one before I just go and buy a bunch of houses? And I think there were a lot of things even about cash flow and how I raise private money and some of those things that I just didn't think about as much. And the reason was because I set this arbitrary goal. And so every micro decision that popped up along the way, I would, it would come to my head I set a goal of buying 10 houses. That means I got to buy, right around one a month, because it took me for a couple months to get going. And if I wasn't on pace for that, then I felt behind. And so I started making these decisions to hurry up and buy 10 houses. And I think looking back on that, what I reflect on now, so I bought 11 houses in my first year. I didn't flip them all, but I bought 11. And the way that I would do that now would be entirely differently, because for a couple of reasons. First, I think the reason that I set that goal was flawed from the outset. The reason I set that goal is because I saw other people doing it, and I thought that meant that I could do it. And so I knew I'm going to go buy 10, and that's my number. And when I think about that, it's so arbitrary, and it means absolutely nothing. And I think there's some ego behind that, because if someone else can do it, that means that I can. And there's nothing special about that person that I heard about. They bought 10 houses, and that means that I can do it as well. And as I shared, a lot of those decisions that I was making were just made in a flawed manner. And so if I could go back and do that first year all over again, how I would have set goals in my first year might have been just hey, let's set a very reasonable goal. Maybe flip one house, or maybe 2 as a stretch. But let's flip one house and then figure out, all right, what are the activities that I need to do in order to flip one house? And then do so many of those activities that it would be unreasonable for me not to achieve the goal. And so then the difference is my focus becomes about the activity that I'm doing, and doing so many of the activity that it would be unreasonable for me not to achieve the goal, as opposed to the outcome of whether or not I'm getting 10 houses, right? And as the months pass, whether or not I feel behind because, if I want to hit 10, I got to buy another one. And then I make decisions because I have to buy another one. And it's just an entirely different way of thinking. And so I learned from that kind of goal setting process. And I've shifted my goal setting strategy to an entirely different strategy now. And how I kind of set goals and operate my business going forward is more around like, okay, here's what I want to accomplish. What would be something that's reasonable to accomplish in that time frame? And then what are the activities needed to achieve that goal? And then, all right, my focus is going to shift entirely on doing so many of that of those activities that it would be unreasonable for me not to achieve it. And that was a big lesson for me, because in my first year, there were a lot of mistakes I made. I think due to the fact that some of the decisions along the way, I didn't realize I was making them then, because I set this arbitrary goal of flipping 10 houses. But now looking back, had I not set that arbitrary goal, and let's say instead the goal was, hey, let's just flip one house and learn as much as I can and get as proficient as I can about the process of flipping a house, so that then I can take all the learnings, apply them to my next one, and be that much better. Instead, it was like, I bought 11 houses in my first 12 months. I think I flipped a few of those, but that means I had like, in my first year, I went from 0 flips going on at the same time to like 8 or 9 going on at the same time. And it was a lot to manage. And I think I learned a lot through that. And there were some pros to having to manage that much at one time. I learned a lot about the operations required to manage that many at one time. But it would have been much preferable if I set a reasonable goal and then just focused on doing so much of the activity that it would have been unreasonable for me not to achieve. And I think I would have made fewer mistakes, and I think I would have, I certainly wouldn't have flipped as many houses. But at the end of the day, like, who gives a shit whether or not I flip 10 houses? What matters most is, can I flip houses, make money on each one, and can I learn in each one about the process so that I can be better on the next one? And so how I kind of apply this framework now, and I'm in my 4th year now, and I haven't really set, in the back of my mind, I want to at least hit as many deals as I did last year. So I did 40 deals last year. So I kind of have some sort of framework on how many, quote, deals that I want to do. But my focus is entirely on, I know that the number of deals is going to be on, how many process calls do I take with sellers? How many offers do I make? How many follow-up calls do we make? How many leads do we qualify? And my focus is on the things that we can control. And I am focused on doing so many of those activities that would be unreasonable for me not to achieve a certain amount of goals, right? Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. And so just kind of something to consider as you guys are out there. I know I feel like it can be very confusing to make goals these days, because on the one hand, you'll see a YouTube out there and it says, make goals. And if you don't make goals and you don't write them down, then you're not going to achieve anything in your life. And then there's another YouTube video that says, don't focus on the goal, focus on the process. And I just wanted to share with you guys my personal experience about that process and some learnings I had about setting this arbitrary kind of ego-driven goal when I first got started. And I'll tell another quick story. There is a student in one of the communities that I'm in. I'm in a few different real estate masterminds, and there is a student that was recently expressing some unhappiness because the student couldn't find any lending in a certain state, because the student's credit was a little low, and was convinced that there were no lenders that would lend to someone with this low of credit. And so I saw this interaction in the community, and I asked the student, I said, well, how many lenders have you reached out to? Oh, at least 10, actually probably closer to 20. And I kind of chuckled in my mind, and I asked the student, how many lenders do you think you would have to reach out to for it to be unreasonable for you not to find someone to fund your deal? And the frame of that question just entirely shifted, and I kind of shared perspective with the student. I said, look, I have probably talked to, and I am not lying, well over 300 lenders in my first 4 years in real estate. And these are private money lenders, hard money lenders, all the above. But I've talked to so many people, And I think focusing on sheer volume and not focusing on whether or not you achieved the outcome that you're after, but focusing on just the pure volume, right? Because then imagine this student, right? Let's say the student says, well, if I talk to 100 people, it would probably be unreasonable if I didn't find one that would be interested in funding my deal. Well, then the goal becomes, okay, now we know what to do next, right? And what we do next is, all right, if I want to talk to 100 lenders, I'm going to go talk to 5 a day for the next 20 days. I'm going to go talk to 10 a day for the next 10 days. And then my focus shifts entirely to that. And then I do that, and I'm going to have learnings from talking to so many different lenders. And then at the end, when I hit that number, I can reassess, right? And let's say I go do that and I still don't have one. And then so I ask the question again, okay, how many more lenders, based on this experience that I just went through, how many more lenders would I need to talk to that it would be entirely unreasonable for me not to find someone? Well, I just talked to 100, had a lot of good conversations. Based on those conversations, if I go talk to another 100, it would probably be pretty unreasonable if I didn't find one, right? Okay, well, now I know what to do. My focus entirely shifts to going to talk to, again, another 10 lenders over the next 10 days. And I have found this to be such a helpful framework because I think it's very easy to get caught up, especially if you're a competitive type A personality, wants to be a high achiever. It's very easy to get kind of drawn into these, like you hear someone like, oh, I flipped 20 houses my first year. Like, oh, well, dang, that means I can do it too. And I'm going to set this arbitrary goal. And at least for me, what I found is I started making decisions based on this arbitrary goal that I set for myself, that, the decisions were not in the best interest of the business or in the best interest of me, but in the best interest of achieving this arbitrary goal that I set. So, I'll close out by sharing another example. I think something as simple as fitness too, right? I think a lot of people, let's say that someone has a fitness goal of putting on 10 pounds of lean muscle. And I think it's very easy. Let's say you get started and, you're 4 weeks in and you haven't seen much progress. And because you haven't seen much progress and you're focused on whether or not you have gained a pound or whatever the event may be, it could be discouraging. Well, if instead you asked yourself, okay, if I want to gain 10 pounds of lean muscle, what are the activities that I would need to do every single day in order to do that? All right, first, I would probably need to find out what my maintenance calories are. Then I would need to find out what my protein target is. And then I would need to make sure that I just hit those calories every single day and be consistent with that. And then on the lifting side, we're not going to go too far in detail on how to gain muscle from a fitness perspective, but on the lifting side, well, if I wanted to gain lean muscle, I probably need to amp up my volume a little bit. And so let's say I need to do, 8 to 15 sets of each muscle group in order to put on that lean muscle. And so then my focus shifts entirely to, okay, now, I need to hit my micros every day. I need to make sure that I lift every day. And that is my focus. And as long as I focus on doing those repetitive activities and being consistent with those activities, then I can shift my focus entirely away from the outcome and to the activities, and I just focus on that, and that's going to increase the likelihood that I can achieve that fitness goal. So short and sweet today. I hope that was helpful. I kind of wanted to share some reflections as I had that experience my first year in real estate, and I think if I were to do it all over again, I would do that differently. And so if you're out there and you're getting started, maybe something to think about in the event that you're coming up with goals and figuring out how to learn, how to do everything that comes along with flipping houses or buying real estate, whatever avenue that whether it's rentals or flipping. I hope that's kind of a helpful thing to think through. And so the closing framework, come up with a reasonable goal, and then what are all of the activities that I would need to do in order to achieve that reasonable goal. And now my focus shifts entirely on I am going to focus on doing so many of those activities that it would be completely unreasonable for me not to achieve that goal. So I hope that was helpful for y'all. Thanks for listening. I love you guys. And until the next one, I'll see you.